Mushroom Wars 2 has launched on Nintendo Switch, and if you don't know what that game is, the name of it may turn you off for it to be some sort of casual little silly game, and then you look at the game and unfortunately you may still think the same. It's only when you get into the game you start to realize the depth in here, but it's always kept to an accessible level that it remains fun and enjoyable while also learning deeper mechanics as you go along. Essentially what Mushroom Wars 2 is a real-time strategy game, except you don't sort of build a base and sort of set up different types of squad. There's not a sort of rock paper scissors mechanic as there is in a lot of RTS games, or sort of exploring and sort of getting different resources and all that sort of stuff. Essentially it's just the building of troops and the attacking of bases is what you have here in Mushroom Wars 2. So you can see at the top of the screen there are numbers applied to each colour. So each colour is a team and it tells you each number as in how many there are per team. In each home then, or sort of base, you'll see there's a number there and that will continually build up. Now as you hit certain amounts you can upgrade that house, which improves how quick mushrooms can be built. And the core part of the game is to take over all the bases and do it strategically to an extent where you sort of wipe out the other team. There are actually different objectives depending on the map as you go through the game. So it's not just about conquest, which is going through and basically taking over all the other team's bases. There's also sort of a capture based mode where you capture certain things and you've got to bring your ticker down to 0. As well as sort of bosses that you find throughout the story or the single player campaign. And the single player campaign is actually surprisingly long. It's got quite a lot to it, but it does a great way of introducing new mechanics and new ways to play, and sort of it builds it in a good way without feeling too simplistic at the start or sort of throwing too many things at you at any one time. You will get sort of different heroes which have 4 different skills, and they really mix things up, and it's utilizing this as well as knowing how many mushroom people to move to each base, because you've got to always move forward. However, if you sort of put all your resources into 1 or 2 buildings, that can also then create a weakness or an opening for the other team to go in and take your other bases. And this can be done not only with just the mushrooms going towards it, but some skills like the ninja skill, for example, can take over any base with a very, very low amount of mushrooms within it. And you've got to always consider that they can counter attack, and you don't know how many mushrooms they have in each house or base. You only know the overall number of what they have in each base. And honestly, when I first played this game, I was like, okay, this is a fun little pick up and play game. And as I went through the story mode or the single player mode, I started to learn a lot more mechanics, and the game has multiple difficulty levels, and you start to really enjoy what it's throwing at you. And then eventually you can then go take that online with up to 4 different teams, and having that 1 versus 1 versus 1 versus 1 scenario where you've got to watch your back as well as take over another team's bases. But while you're doing that, another team could be coming in and taking you out, so you've always got to be watching yourself. And it creates this really enjoyable dynamic that I really did enjoy. I'm not a big fan, I'll preface it and say this, of RTS games, especially in a multiplayer aspect. But I think here with Mushroom Wars 2, it's accessible enough, it's fun enough, it's easy enough to understand the mechanics, but then it's quite action packed at times, because you've got to keep moving, and when you've got 7, 8, 9 bases you're looking after, and you've got to see how many numbers there are, whether to upgrade them, whether to just push them forward to take over the next base to help boost overall resources, or do you sort of build up a strong defense force, let them come at you and use some of your powers to hold them off and then counterattack them. There's a lot of strategy here, and may not have the same amount of strategy as you have in other much bigger RTS type games, but you'd be surprised, I think, by just how detailed and structured and just how much the game offers you. I had a blast playing this game, and I highly recommend it. It's out on multiple platforms now, but it just recently released on Nintendo Switch. And if what you see here is interesting, I will say that if RTS games are not your thing, you might be pleasantly surprised by how enjoyable this actually is. I had a blast playing it, like I said. I'm not the biggest RTS fan. I enjoy it every now and then, but I think here matches aren't 40 minutes or half an hour. These matches can be 2 minutes depending on how you play. It could be 5 minutes, but nevertheless, it's never terribly long, which means jumping out and getting into the next game is fun and enjoyable. And the UI is done in such a fine way that everything is understandable and easy to read as you go. And it's just, it's just a lot of fun.